Hey, how's it going, everyone? I'm really excited about this video because I have collaboration coming up with big time content creator D20 Woodworking, who actually got me into content creation at all. So without D20, I don't think you'd ever have the Daring Lime because there was a video a long time ago. I didn't realize I was going to talk about this, but where D20 said, if you ever want to make content, just send me a message in Discord and I'll help out. And then he helped me out get started with like webcams and everything. And now we're here.
Yeah, I remember making that video because for a long time people were like, "Oh, should I get into content creation? Shouldn't I?" And I believe that more content creators in this space is inherently better for the game. Even if people don't like content creators, they may not like me as a content creator, but they could love you because you dive into these things a little bit deeper than I do and such. Versus, I'm just here to entertain you and dance monkey dance kind of thing. So, I believe every single content creator brings something interesting and unique to content creation and to the Marvel Champions space. So again, I encourage everyone, get into it if you're slightly interested. Just give it a try.
Yeah, and that's a great segue into why we're doing this series. The purpose of this is we're just going to be talking about different aspects of the game, informed by the comments that you all leave. So I made a community post a while ago that just asked what you'd like to see us talk about, and then I compiled all of that into a document, and I'm keeping track of all of it. So if you comment on this video as well, I'll keep track of that and add it into the document. And then all of our discussion points that we talk about are going to be informed by that document of all of your comments. Before we go on, the ZWA currently stands for the Zesty Woodworking Alliance, which is a placeholder. It may stick. It might be one of those things where we just never come up with anything, and now it's the Zesty Woodworking Alliance, but it doesn't really relate to the game. So name ideas, please comment them below. And then for our first topic, it's going to be on the correct way to play, because this is something that came up in the comments, and I didn't realize how common of a sentiment it was. But there seems to be this idea that um, maybe not on an individual level that there's a correct way to play, but that there's some sort of authority that's going to tell you that you're playing wrong. And I don't know who it is, and but anyways, let's just jump into this. This is the
The Marvel
today's
Champions
topic.
Police just coming in at any time.
Yeah, what is it? The Time Variance Authority, TVA.
Yeah.
TVA is gonna come get you and just say no, you can't play that.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is my not hot take because I've been thinking about this for a while, but as for regarding the correct way to play, false. that is my that is my opinion. Is that there is no correct way to play. And what do you think? What do you think about that?
Okay, so I agree with you like 99% of the time that there is no correct way to play. I think in the end of the day, if you purchase this game and you read the rules and you go, I don't like this rule. Like, I don't know, retaliate, let's say, is just not well done. And you go, well, I want to change it slightly to make it make more sense or to make it more fun. Because at the end of the day, we play these games for fun. Then you should do that thing to make it better and make it fun. So I agree that there is no correct way to play technically. The only time I disagree is I think content creators need to kind of be careful with it because if we play incorrectly and people are trying to learn from us, then it throws them off. And then they'll be like, well, I watched D20 Woodworking. He said this is how you play. And it's like, oh, wait, no, that's not how you play. So with that, and if you're teaching the game, maybe just point out if you're playing slightly wrong or slightly different or something slightly different.
Yeah, I that's another reason why I stopped doing gameplay on my channel is that because there's a lot of rules that are just really annoying to keep track of, and I don't think that it's actually a big deal in the grand scheme of the game. But because it doesn't really matter. It's your cards, it's your game, you're playing it. It doesn't matter if you decide that Thanos retaliates you on stage 2 or he doesn't retaliate you on stage 2. It doesn't it's such a small issue, but
Yeah.
when you're trying to find like this you're getting all of the rules correct, suddenly things like that start becoming a lot more important, and then they start kind of taking away from what made the game fun for me, which is why
Mhm.
I stopped doing gameplay on the channel. I think that's also a great thing to talk about house rules. You mentioned that a little bit, and in my opinion, this is definitely the way to play the game. I love house rules, and it is how I played at the beginning when I very first got the game. Because one, the first rules reference that ships with the game does not have all the answers to your questions. There's so
Yeah.
many confusing timings going on. Just play Spider-Man with with what is it? Webbed up or whatever, and the Hawkeye ally against Ultron with drones, and then just try to find the answer. Like you're not going to. Like they added a bunch of timing charts later, but before that, I was I would just move on. Be like, I'd think about it for a second. I'd try to find the rule, and if I couldn't, I would just move on and
Mhm.
choose something that works and maybe keep that consistent. And it was a lot more fun that way. I I enjoyed that so much more than digging through and trying to find like that Thanos retaliate thing or like the toe to toe if it damages you beforehand. Like that's sometimes interesting to talk about, but when you're in pursuit of the like no rules mistakes game, that becomes not very fun.
I agree, and a lot of times when we get into, like, the toe-to-toe discussion, the retaliate discussion, it's because we are in the weeds with this stuff that, like, we kinda get really deep into it. When the average player is just gonna be like, "I bought this game because I like Marvel or I like deck construction games, and I just wanna have fun." And even with the timing chart and 1.6 rules, I'm pretty sure that even recent printings of core boxes don't always have the 1.6 rules in it. So like you're still dealing with those original rules and people are playing kind of that older style way. And there are things that don't make sense. I mean, at the 1.4 rule mark is when they start doing the whole events that have defense on it now considers you a defender. And that changed the entire way that you played the game because before that, protection was kind of really weak and it was off. And people just kind of house ruled that. And there was a discussion on Reddit and Facebook like, hey, we're just going to do this because when I play attack events, I'm the attacker. But when I play defense events, I'm not the defender. Like, that doesn't make sense. So people were already kind of changing that anyway. And then that just ended up being the rules anyway. So,
That's so interesting to me because I was not around at that point. I don't remember the change from defense events not being uh not being
it,
defenses.
It was a wild time because I remember, like, early on, everyone was just like, "Why would I play protection?" Like, there it's so limited in what you could do because you have to, like, physically defend to trigger certain cards, and it was just like, ugh, like, "Okay, that's just what I'm gonna do every single round is just physically defend." And then when they finally changed it up in the 1.4 rules, we were all like, "Oh my god, this is so much better." Like, thank god they did this. It was a huge probably the biggest change in Marvel Champions was that rule book.
The card that I always think about regarding that rule is hilarious to me. I think it's so funny that Powerful Punch has the defense trait.
It's so weird.
Like you just, that seemed that's is that a newer card? I don't even remember. Like was Powerful Punch
Uh
like at that time did you used to deal 4 damage, it had the defense trait, but you attacked but you didn't defend, but it had a defense trait?
So Powerful Punch, let's see, that came out in the Mutant Genesis wave. So that would have been already 1.4 done, I believe. But you would have back in the day, yeah, basically just been like, okay, I guess I have a defense event, so I can use a defense resource for it, but it wouldn't make you the defender. So
Yeah, cuz like Shadowcat interacts with that really in
mhm,
depth. So if that was different, that'd be weird.
yeah, it'd be really weird. So I guess I'm going to have a quick question with you. What are house rules that you like use and enjoy?
Yeah, so when I'm playing a two player, 3 player, 4 player game and we're not close to winning. So let's say it's like halfway through the game point, the game. If someone dies, we just ignore it and then keep
Yeah.
playing. Because like if
Mhm.
someone dies like at the beginning, we'll just restart. If someone dies at the end and there's only like a couple turns left, we'll try to go for the win. But if it's in that like middle point where it's a 2 hour game, we've spent 1 hour, we're not just gonna have the other person sit there and watch, being like, yeah, that's good
Yeah,
play
it's
there.
really sweet.
I think that
Yeah.
yeah, that's that's a house rule that I have always done. Like I've just never even considered not doing that. of either
Do you
you're restarting from the midpoint or you're trying to win in the next turn or two. I never just go on for like an hour with another player just sitting there.
do you do any punishments for it? Like, do you do an acceleration token or an extra bad card or anything,
So
or just
the
like, nah, we're
last
just moving on?
the last time this happened, uh, I have a picture of it on my YouTube um, community post channel. There's a crazy board state where I was like, we're against the hood, and I just randomly picked modulars, and then kept them upside down, so I didn't know which ones they were that were shuffling in, and we got this like crazy surge train that started out with one under fire that like finished the main scheme and caused us all to trigger his ability again. And then he ended up dealing out like 5 encounter cards to each of us in a 3-player game. The infinites came in at that point, and then all of the infinites had surge, and we got all of the infinite minions in the same round. So it was crazy. So there was I don't know, roughly about 10 minions engaged with us, and he finished the main scheme, and he put out a couple side schemes all in one turn. And then, of course, like I was the last player. So that happened on the
Mhm.
first player's turn. I was the last player after all of that happened. And then I get a card that surges, and then I get another card that surges, and then I get another card that surges. And then after like the third or fourth surge, I finally get land on gang up after that. And now there's infinite minions, literally infinites engaged with me. And then I just died to gang up. And then it was
Yeah.
like this was like one of the most fun games I've played of Marvel Champions. But that gang up was really unlucky. So I just revealed a different counter card because I was like, no, I want to
Yeah.
play this out. I don't want to just sit here and get hit by a surge train. Like I acknowledge I was like fair play, Hood, fair play, but I'm gonna ignore that one. Another thing
I
about that though is that there is absolutely no way that we played a perfect game up to that
right.
point.
Yeah.
So the encounter deck order wasn't in its perfect state, and had it been in any other order and I got any other card, I would have lived. So that's
Mhm.
another thing where like maybe people disagree with me on that, but like the the encounter card specifically being gang up to me in that situation at the end of that surge train does not feel really any more or less valid than if I had that other one that didn't kill me.
Yeah.
But that's getting into more of my opinion. But I think the general statement of like if you enjoy dying to that surge train and how and get into gang up, then fine. But if you want to play it out like I do, like I wanted to deal with that board state and I knew we could, and we actually did clear the entire board in that game because we had this like crazy setup. That was so much fun. I didn't want to miss out on like clearing that board state.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's a lot more fun to me when you feel like you free yourself up to house rule it, and not saying that you house rule it to be anything else that other people want. I'm exclusively saying house rule it to improve the fun of your game. So if it doesn't make it more fun for you, you don't house rule it. And if the house rule makes it more fun for you house rule it.
Hmm. I agree 100% with that because, for example, like when we play two-player and I play with novels, let's say we're playing Ant-Man and Wasp, right? So their signature allies are each other, and you just have a dead card in your hand, like or your deck, and that's not fun. And when she would play, she'd be like, "What can I do with this? Can I play this ally?" I'd be like, "No, actually, you can't do anything with that card." And she's like, "Well, that's boring. Why is it there?" So it's like an automatic resource. So a while back, I switched it so that signature allies can be replaced with the team up card essentially. And I think this is just more fun because those are the cards that you want to play. There's only one of them. It's a perfect switch and whatever. And now and again, people will, comment like, "Oh, that's not the right way to play." And you're right. It's not the right way to play, but it doesn't matter because it makes it more interesting. Versus, I have this card that is now just a pure resource card, and that's it. That's all I can do with that thing.
Yeah. And then another thing that goes off of this, like I think that's a great house rule. I've heard of a lot of different people doing that because I think that one's just like actually one of the best house rules I've heard of. And then, but you mentioned earlier that about the core box not shipping with 1.6, and
Mhm.
I think that that's actually a good thing. I,
Mm.
because I'm imagining new player shows up, gets Marvel Champions, sits down to play, and is like, "What? You saw the video of me reading it. It was like 5 hours. It's like 5 hours to sit down and read the rules. I don't know. And the everything's so specific in that book that if you don't already understand the game at a baseline level, I feel like that rule book is basically completely useless. Unless you just really want to, unless you want to do like a homework assignment, because like it takes 5 hours to read it. So let's assume that
Mhm.
you're really diligent and you remember more than the average person. Let's say it takes you 10 to 15 hours to learn how to play the game, and then that rulebook's useful. But then the percentage of players that are going to do that, I feel, are much lower, and then we'd have way less people playing the game. But then,
I, I I feel I agree to a point. I think the problem is the rule book is as you said way too long. Like I think there's a good 50% of that rule book that could be condensed and cut down. Like there's so many one-off examples of something that like this crazy thing happened. It got put up on Hall of Heroes and they went, "Oh boy, we don't want it to do it that way. So let's create a whole subset of rules like the cost arrow, right? The cost arrow didn't used to be a thing, and then now that's a massive thing. Deal and take used to not be a thing. Now that's a massive thing. And I feel like all that can be kind of simplified. And unfortunately, a lot of the cards have not similar wording. Like, so like one card may say like, attack one time, deal 3 damage, attack one time, deal 3 damage, attack one time, deal 3 damage. And the other card might say make 3 attacks, dealing 3 damage. And they're almost roughly the same, but we create these little nuances in the rules. And it's really kind of because of those inconsistencies with card wording. That's why I think it's so long. I would say at the very least, it should have the 1.4 rules just because of the defense thing, because that does change like fundamentally how the game plays. But you just need that defense section. You don't necessarily need all the rules that added onto it. Just like that section, just copy and paste it in the original book.
yeah, I think in my ideal world, it would just like have a section saying if you want the updated rules or you need to look up a ruling that's not in this book, then go to
Go online.
1.6.
Yeah.
But then that brings up, I think, one final thing that I wanted to mention about house rules and the rules in general here is that, in my opinion, the way that rule books function and best function in a game is only to the extent that they improve your experience. So you have all of these cards, you have this like sandbox to play with. If you're like 5 years old, like it doesn't matter what the rules are. You're just throwing things together and playing. And then we get older and we start needing things to make sense, and it has to be, well defined and all that stuff. And then life becomes less interesting. And at that point, that's when we start needing some rules because we have lost all of our childlike imagination and whimsy and fun in the world. And then when we need those rules, I think you use the rules, you learn all the rules because it facilitates how the game functions. And I think it's pretty inarguable that if you don't know any of the rules of a game, it will be not as good of a game as if you know some of the rules. But then as you go towards that peak of like, now the orange book that shipped is now not enough because it doesn't have everything. And then you go to 1.4, that's not enough. 1.5, that's not enough. 1.6, that's not enough. At some point, I feel like everyone's going to have a different line where learning more rules is not going to improve your experience of the game. Because, like, for me, I don't know when exactly it was because I went from Orange Book to making videos on the channel while I was still essentially a brand new player compared to everyone else that was commenting on my videos. Where, like, every commenter knew more about the rules than I did at the start of my channel. So then I started learning all of them and it was improving my experience. And then I don't know exactly when it was, but then it started just becoming annoying and like actively being a detriment to my experience of the game. And I
Yeah.
felt pressure to keep going because I was like, what you were saying of like, oh, I'm posting it online. People are learning how to play from me. I got to get it right. But then it was making me not enjoy the game anymore. So I think that's my overall feeling on the rules is you learn the rules to the point where you where it's improved your experience, and as soon as it starts to not improve your experience by learning more rules, you just don't.
hmm I I'm gonna quickly steel man the argument on the other side because I know there's people out there that are gonna be like heated on us and just be like, you guys are completely wrong. Because the steel man argument be, um, you should play the game the way that it was designed to be played because then you're just playing a different game. And to what I would say to that person is, Yeah, you're probably right. Like to a point, I don't disagree with you. But at the end of the day, like I paid $50. Actually, now in Marvel Champions, I've paid hundreds upon hundreds of dollars. I'm gonna play it so it's fun at this point. Like I feel like I've invested enough money that like I'll take it from here. Like I'll get it as right as I can. But I think for me personally, as you say, the most important thing is to have fun. I get for some people, the most important thing is playing the way that the designer intended it. And if that's what works for you, cool, go for it. But I agree with the sentiment that if you're not having fun in the game, kind of what's the point of playing it then?
Yeah, and like addressing that argument because that does make sense to me. But another thing that's special about this game is I think it's fundamentally different than other games where that argument makes more sense. So in
Mm,
like Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh or something, it's a player versus player game to where
right.
if you're playing your rules against someone else, then they're like, "What are you doing?" Like Pot of Greed only draws 2 cards, not 3, and that's banned. Like you don't want someone coming in just playing. I play Pot of Greed, draw three
Yeah.
cards from the top of my deck, and then they're like, "What?" That's just we're not
Yeah.
playing the same game, and
Yeah.
that's really really bad in competitive games that are like I'm playing against you. But
Mm.
in this game, I've said this a lot on my channel, but the villain doesn't have any feelings. They're just cards. But yeah, I think that's fundamental. That because that's the thing that goes over a lot. So like we're gonna talk about deck building in a second, but like the the 40 card rule and stuff like that, like just old deck building sentiments. I feel like a lot of that gets carried over into this game because it's
Mm.
similar enough to where the ideas make sense, but it is more nuanced than just saying like 40 card decks are better because like
Right.
in Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh and stuff like that, you really really want to maximize consistency and maximize your combos. But in those games you're drawing 1 card. In this,
Mm.
you're refreshing your whole hand every time, and there's actually an active detriment to resetting your deck. So it is different, and it's more nuanced than that.
Yeah. I agree.
Okay, now we can go into the correct way to deck build, which I wonder what I'm gonna say. False. I think this is also just a false statement. There is no correct way to deck build, and very similar spirit behind it is just that again, your decks, in my opinion, should serve your enjoyment of the game. And if you enjoy playing, building your decks in a certain way, then that's great. And if you don't, and other people like doing it in a way that you don't, then I just don't think you should do it that way. Just do it the way that you like.
Mm. I think too, there's certain people that want the most powerful deck imaginable, and there's people that care about theme and they want it to be the most thematic deck. And I see it on Reddit a lot where these two sides like argue with each other. And at the end of the day, like again, you're here to have fun. So if building the most powerful deck and feeling like, Doctor Strange and like truly magical and going crazy with your deck is like the best feeling in the world, yeah, go for it. Like that's awesome. Or if you rather, okay, I'm going to do a Captain America deck, and yes, his stun deck 3.0 might be the best deck that's out there for him. But if you just like, hey, I just want to be like the allies and like hang out and whatnot, then do that. You know what I mean? Like if that's what's more fun, do that thing.
Yeah, yeah, because I've seen that too. I stopped posting as much on Reddit because first I thought Marvel Champions would be different. I thought it would be like the one space on Reddit where it's not just people arguing with each other just for the sake of arguing, but I think that the website just wants like encourages dissent more than anything else.
Yeah, yeah. That I mean, that's a Reddit. Reddit has a fundamental problem. I think Reddit's the subreddit of Marvel Champions isn't half bad. But the whole point of Reddit is to argue. I mean, with the upvote and downvote system, and you're basically just like purging thought that's not what groupthink is really unfortunate because I can go in there and say Valkyrie is the goat, and when I did that in the beginning, I got downvoted all the time, and now like everyone's kind of in on it, and we can all wink and nod at each other with it, and now it gets upvoted, but unless you have something on the outside like saying that, like it's a whole mess. But I will agree that as far as deck building, because there's other content creators who I won't name that build very, very good decks overall with their gameplay. But the hero can sometimes be plug and play, right? Like the deck itself is incredibly good. And I've seen people argue, well, why? Like, why would you do that? Because you could just be any hero and they're just like running the same deck. And it's like, well, if they're enjoying their game, why does it matter? Or two, people might want to see that, like, hey, that's possible that the aspect cards, basic and aggression, justice, whatever it is incredibly strong, and the heroes can complement. It's just a different way to play the game and enjoy the game.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a good point because there isn't really a point in at least in my opinion, there's no point in telling someone that the way that their deck building is wrong. Like
Mhm.
it's just like a flawed idea to me because again, this isn't there's no objective way of measuring it really. Like you can
Mhm.
maybe say like you're trying to take on like the hardest scenarios, equivalent to like in like a TCG of saying that you can win tournaments with your deck. But again, the point of this game isn't about just taking on the hardest scenarios. And it's also not about just taking on the easiest scenarios. Like one of the key points of this game is that you have standard 1, 2, and 3. You have expert, you have skirmish mode, you have standard and normal expert, you have heroic X where you do any amount. You could play skirmish with heroic 3 if you wanted, like, and then standard 2, but then like expert 1. I don't know why you do that, but like maybe
But you can.
you can, yeah. The difficulty is completely adjustable to be whatever experience you want for the most part. Like the villain set, they come with their own cards that are a set difficulty because they're printed the way they are. But again, that's only part of the villain's deck, and then there's so much room to customize it to your experience. So if you're wanting to play thematic decks where you're just like, I'm going to play a Spider-Man deck where every single card in my deck has Spider-Man or a Spider-Man character printed on it. And you like
Yeah.
limit yourself to like just those handful of justice cards you're playing, like Crisis Averted and Great Responsibility, and then some of the like Web Warrior allies or something. And that's the only cards you're using. You can find a difficulty and villain to match that and be fun and thematic. But and it's not there's no point in my mind of saying, well, that deck doesn't beat Expert Red Skull in campaign mode. So therefore I think it's a bad deck. Where it's like,
Yeah.
no, that's not the point.
And I would say too, like for the people that are, I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit later on too, but if you're on your journey of deck building, you're going to get a lot of advice that like, okay, the best way to deck build is do it this way or do it this way, or just, net deck from Marvel CDB or have binders or have box. It doesn't matter. Try anything that works and see what works for you. Cause I know, like, for example, Nelson uses binders and he looks through the cards in a binder or whatever. I can never do that. Like I have to do it through Marvel CDB and I have to like kind of sit there and play with it. And then I personally am really bad at deck building, I think. So I have to actually play with my terrible deck and go, oh no, like those 8 cards I picked out were terrible. I shouldn't have done that. Replace them, put new ones in, and then usually I'm good to go. Versus I watch other people like Nelson who does it the first time. He's like, maybe he has like 2 or 3 bad cards, but it's never as bad as I am with it. And that's just my process versus his process. One process isn't correct. One process isn't necessarily better. It's just we're just making it better for ourselves.
Yeah. And then I think this is a good time to talk about what people the biggest probably contention point about deck building is around allies, I think. Of are you using too many allies to where it's like what you were saying earlier of like this deck you can copy and paste onto X hero and then it just works. So like
Mm.
leadership as an entire aspect kind of gets that dart thrown at it, just saying like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
the your deck is leadership, so I'm not interested because all you're doing is playing allies and using make the call and bring them back, and I don't care how many times you recycle Nick Fury. Which that is like, okay, maybe you don't care, but
Mhm.
some people do. But then on the other side, there's other people that are like, I don't want to play too many allies because if I have so many allies in my deck, then I'm not playing my hero cards as much, and I want to play my hero cards.
I love allies. I use them all the time, and I do think it's a I do think they're the strongest thing in the game, generally speaking, because basically their stat line is almost equivalent to your heroes the vast majority of the time. Plus, it gets you a free block, all that fun stuff. and like I'll personally challenge myself. Like I'll see a deck that uses no allies, and I'll try it, and like it's interesting. I mean, it's cool that people can do it, but I'm not really enjoying it because I just like allies so much. Like I like that team aspect of it, especially as a solo player. I don't necessarily have that team aspect with another player. So like the allies are my team, and it does let me feel like more of a superhero in that sense. Um, so yeah, I've tried to pull back on allies and I can't do it. But allies are so strong that I get why people are saying, because I say the same exact thing about encounter sets that force you to have certain allies. Like I'm like, ugh, this for me personally ruins the encounter set and makes it not as fun because I do think they're really strong. So I get people's arguments against them, but like I see like this if a deck has 20 allies in it, like let's go for it, you know?
Speaking of, yeah, well, another thing I wanted to bring up is that this is probably the thing that I've seen the most of where people think that the TVA is going to come get them and like tell them that no, there's too many allies in your deck, you're being removed from the timeline or whatever. Because, but that's never happened to me in my experience. Like, I want to show this deck. I posted this deck a long time ago on Marvel CDB, and it has 16 allies in it, and no one said anything mean to me about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's an aggression deck with 16 allies and boot camp. Am I playing aggression? Debatably. I'm debatably playing aggression because I have boot camp. But again, I didn't get any sort of negative feedback from this. And for the entirety of my channel actually, like I've played decks with 10 to 12 allies often on my channel, and I still don't have a negative comment that at least that I remember like calling me out for having too many allies after all this
Same.
time. It's like I just want to let people know that at least in my experience, and I'm probably more likely to get called out on things in this game because I have a YouTube channel, I haven't had this happen to me.
Yeah.
So
Same.
no
I
no
haven't
fear.
either. Yeah.
Because like also the YouTube community is solo skewed. I ran the tests at least on my channel. It's just like the main mode of play on my channel is like 60% of people roughly are like are solo players, and whether you like it or not, you have to find a way to live in solo, and that
Mm.
usually comes down to you have some sort of flipping strategy. You thwart a lot and flip down, or you can try to like play defense and then block and then stay alive that way. But the easiest way to do it is to play an ally, have it thwart, deal damage, whatever you need out of it, and then block. So like a lot of
Yeah.
decks tend to have 6+ allies that you see for solo, especially, and that's not an issue.
Mm.
I like that's totally fine having 6+ allies, and so a lot of the people that you're going to be interacting with also likely have a lot of likely are playing 6+ allies unless they're purposefully limiting themselves to not have 6+ allies, which is also valid. But yeah, I
Yeah.
just haven't seen. I've seen more often the sentiment that someone's afraid that someone is going to that they're going to get called out for having too many allies than I've seen anyone get called out for having too many allies. It's kind of like my
Agreed.
main point here.
Agreed.
It's like this Star-Lord one was kind of a meme one that I made where it's just like, is this enough? Like, do I need more allies? Do I have to go down to one copy of Boot Camp to get those extra 2 allies into my deck? That was kind of the idea behind this deck. But then this next one, I actually really like this. And another thing I wanted to point out is this is a Magneto deck I made that one has 50 cards. So going against the grain there, has 16 allies in it, many of which are trait locked to where he can't actually play them out of his hand. And it has 83 likes, and no one was mean to me about it.
Yeah.
It's like one of my most popular decks has a plethora of dead cards that you could possibly get, and allies that if they come into your hand you can't play, and also the entire crew's here. Like we have Maria Hill, we have Professor X, we have Nick Fury. So like the whole gang showed up for this deck, and it was fine.
Yeah.
No one was mean to me, unless
Well,
D20 is mean
and
right now.
no. So I actually, I'm happy you brought this up with the 50 card deck because I feel like this is another thing that like I see on Reddit and online all the time. People are like, "Do I have to stay with 40 card decks?" And like the overwhelming responses are like, "Yes, like it's always more efficient, it's always better." And I think that depends on the deck, 100%. Because there are times when I build like a Black Widow deck where upgrades and supports, I have like, I don't know, 20 some out there, let's say, and it gets kind of crazy that I'm flipping through my actual deck like super fast. And yes, from an efficiency standpoint, I'm playing those cards faster and faster and faster, which is good. But I'm now basically getting, 2 encounter cards every other round, which is not good, right? Which is a detriment. So I think if I had more cards that worked off of the upgrades and supports I have out there, that's a good thing too. So I feel like there's this huge trap that people fall into that like they'll create a 44 card or 43 card deck and they'll be like, "Oh, I just have to cut 3 out because like it has to get down to 4." No, no it doesn't. Like there are a lot of decks that are 43, 44, 50 whatever cards and they are really good and they run really well.
The argument that people say supporting 40 card decks is that your hero cards are better than your aspect cards. So you want to get a higher concentration of your hero cards. And that's true most of the time. But like you'll see with like allies especially, that your hero cards aren't always better than allies. And there's also reasons, like you were saying with like your Black Widow deck, to where you don't want to get 2 encounter cards every turn and then just die. So
Yeah.
like I think this Magneto deck, I wanted to bring it up because I feel like me explaining why I used 16 allies with all of these trait locked allies and 50 cards would be useful, because it's not just this deck that can do this. There's plenty of different heroes and decks that can be very functional above 40 and with like weird cards in it. But you want to make sure you have a reason as well, in the sense that like you don't want to just cut down to 40 cards just because you want to cut down to 40 cards. And you don't
Mhm.
want to go above 40 cards just because you want to go above 40 cards. Like what you're saying, if you end up with a 43 card deck or a 44 card deck after you've put all the things in that you want, you just make sure that you're justifying like why you're adding that extra card or why you're cutting that card after that, and not just going towards that goal just arbitrarily. So for
Right.
Magneto, um, there's a lot of people saying that like he's uh, in my opinion, he's very consistent. But people tend to really hate dead cards a lot more than I do in this game. It's like the Wrapped in Metal and Magnetic Missile combo that's in his deck really irks people sometimes, where it's like
Mhm.
you get one in your hand, you can't play it. Or you don't have the minion at the time you have the upgrade, etc., whatever it is. That can be annoying for people. And then another thing is digging deep makes sense with Magneto in the sense that you're discarding, but
Mhm.
it doesn't make sense in the sense that oftentimes it comes into your hand and then you can't do anything with it, because if you draw digging deep, that's not good. So what I did was I was like, I want to do digging deep, and the digging deep white fox thing, but
Mm.
I want it to be a little more consistent. So I purposefully bumped this up to 50 cards, because if you think about it, it's really weird to think about, because Magneto's hard to deck build for, but Magneto discards every turn to when you use his ability to get to one of his cards. So
Mhm.
increasing the deck size, you can essentially think of it as increasing the average number of cards between his identity specific cards. So then if it's like if I had a 40 card deck, let's assume it's like 3 cards that you're discarding. If I go up to 50, I don't know the exact numbers on it off the top of my head, but let's say it goes up to 5 cards that I'm discarding on average. That improves my odds of actually discarding Digging Deep. And then
Mhm.
another thing it does is it gets more allies into the discard pile. And so this deck is all about using Make the Call to bring those allies out that are trait locked, because that's really fun. But then how do I keep
Mhm.
that consistent? So I have the 50 cards, no, meaning that there's going to be allies in my discard pile. Lockjaw is in the deck because he, worst case scenario with Magneto, you have a normal hand of 5 cards. You discard till you get one of his cards, which is likely going to be playable because there are a lot of minions in the deck. So like maybe Magnetic Missiles, like uh, two out of his cards aren't that reliable, but like his events, other than that, are all really reliable and good. His upgrades, other than that, are all really reliable and good. It's like odds are I'm going to have one card that's good in my hand. And then if I have make the call, I can play any other ally. If I have just one of these 16 allies that's not trait locked, then I can play that ally because not all of these allies are trait locked. And then if I have make the call, suddenly the discard pile is my hand because you have
Yeah.
all of these cards in here. And I playtested this deck multiple times and like took it up against like expert scenarios. I think one of the scenarios I tested it against was actually the Project Wide Awake because I'm like, if I test this
Mm.
against something that specifically counters allies and it works in that scenario, then I feel confident just like recommending this deck to people, and it worked great. And yeah, so if there, I think this is a great example of if there's a reason, then it's fine. You don't have to worry about the card count. And then this is just a specific example where I'm like, I actually want to break the norm of 40 cards. And then I want to have a bunch of cards that if it comes into my hand normally, it's a dead card. And because Magneto offers you that ability because he comes with that consistency and he has that discard mechanic. So I wanted to build a deck for Magneto that wouldn't work on any other character, but that worked really well for him, and it was really fun. I don't think I have much more to say
And
about it.
no, I was gonna say too that for 95 probably percent of the heroes, there's also not one right way to play them. Like so like Magneto you can look at with this deck and absolutely this will work and do great. You could also do an aggression deck with him and you just pulling out minions to use them to throw at things, right? And like that will absolutely work. So I think it's important for people to know too, like they'll see this and be like, there's a better way to play him or whatever. It doesn't matter. There's many ways to play him. And that's what for me personally makes him such a great hero. But it's important to note that too, that like there are very few heroes in this game where there's just like one absolute like best way and there's nothing else that makes sense to play them. The vast majority of them you could play it different ways and maybe the scenario it wasn't the best scenario to pair it up with, but generally speaking you can kind of do it however you want.
The final thing, this may or may not stay in the video, but the Nick Fury dilemma is a famous video from D20 Woodworking of, and this might be the actual spice where we don't agree. Because I know you have some very strong opinions, and like I've watched your channel for a while, and I don't agree with you on everything, but I think it's okay. But
No, I think that's good.
yeah,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts?
All right.
Has
So
has
here's
this enlightened you? Do you have any different opinions?
I don't know. Okay. So the Nick Fury dilemma is essentially is it inherently bad that there's a card like Nick Fury? And the reason being is because I would say Nick Fury is the best ally in the game, and he came in the core box. So there's two ways to look at this. There's the way of that it's bad because you're going to basically almost auto include this card into the deck almost all the time. And that's going to limit your deck building from roughly 25 cards down to 24. We see this with like Domino because of certain cards you always want to play with her or whomever else, right? Is it bad to have this hero in there all the time and limiting your deck building space? The other side is that well, no, it's good because it's now you're having a good reliable ally every single time. They've included it in the game, so thus you should use it, so on and so forth. My biggest issue that I have with this is when I say, okay, I'm not the biggest fan of Nick Fury. Yeah, it's good that there's a ceiling, right? Realistically, we should never get an ally as powerful as this again. Um, but it kind of stinks because we do have something so incredibly powerful that it almost makes sense to never. It doesn't make sense to not include him, generally speaking. And then my biggest gripe is when people make the argument, well, if you want to like hamper yourself, just don't include him. And I can't mentally get over that. Like if there are builds that work and strong builds that work, why would I not do that thing? Like it shouldn't be incumbent on me to purposely detriment my decks to make the game more challenging or make it quote unquote better. I'm fine with making villains harder because that's why we have mod sets and that's why we adjust it. But deck building restrictions already exist. Why would I purposely restrict myself on a card? So that's the general gist. You can get in lots more nuanced talk with it. I I go back and forth on this a lot. I use them a lot. There are heroes I enjoy like Domino, where it's okay. I recognize that she has digging deep that I'm pretty much going to put in every single deck. White Fox, I'm going to put in pretty much every single deck. Is that inherently a bad thing? I say no because that's her thing, and that's what is good about her. Versus Nick Fury can almost go into any single deck, and it makes sense to do. So I don't know how I feel about this anymore. I feel like I got so much heat for it because I was just like, it's bad that he exists because it's too strong of a card and whatever. And I don't agree with the side that says purposely hamper yourself to quote unquote have a better experience. But is it terrible that he exists? Well, no, something has to be the ceiling, right? So like if he wasn't there, would just Professor X just be the new ceiling and I'd just be complaining about that. So I do think it's good that we do have that upper ceiling of like, okay, at least we know. And I make the same argument with Ronan too. People hate Ronan. I love Ronan because we have a ceiling. We know most likely we're never gonna have a villain that hard again, and something has to be that ceiling. So I don't know. I go back and forth.
I like the conflict in you. There's like three or four
Yeah.
sides throughout that, and it was great. And I okay, I think I want to try to just look at it from a different angle because I understand where you're coming from. I feel like I don't think that I
Mm,
personally feel the same um, draw to play him. Like I do
mm,
play him a lot, but I don't feel bad. Like I don't feel like I'm hampering myself or like by not playing him. Like in the sense I could have a stronger card in my deck, but it doesn't bother me. But I'm
mm.
gonna go away from the bothering because it does bother you, and there are people that feel the same way as you.
Sure.
So that's there's no point in me saying, well, you should not feel bothered by this because in my opinion, I'm not bothered, so therefore you shouldn't be. That doesn't make sense to me either. But
Mm,
then it's interesting. I think the interesting thing about this is he came in the core box, where I've listened to interviews with the designers before, and they did they make a point to say that they purposefully add decisions that are not gray areas because it
mm.
helps teach people the game. It's like the
Yeah.
obligations I think are the best example of that. I remember them citing the obligations as like you should if you have the option, you should basically always exhaust to get rid of your obligation because the other
Mm,
option is worse. And we left
yeah.
that in there as not a choice. Real it's a choice because you can make the wrong choice wrong depending on the situation but that you'll learn the game and learn what's strong and you'll feel good about figuring that out is where they're coming
Mm,
from. And then you'll notice later on, now the obligations don't a lot of them don't have that choice anymore. It's not like one thing that's like, yeah, this card helps me because it gets me to alter ego and gives me my alter ego ability and at no detriment, essentially. Except I exhaust, but I
mm.
get a resource or like whatever other ability you have. Like that's not that big of a deal. And now the obligations can be like, yeah, your hero doesn't work anymore. So have fun with that. And there's no just like, oh, you actually get to flip to alter ego to get rid of this. Like that's phased out because they're not looking to give like the players that decision point to learn. They're done teaching us, I feel like, at this point.
Mm,
But then with Nick Fury, I feel like it's maybe something similar to where when you play Nick Fury, well, one, you can deal 4 damage to an enemy, draw 3 cards, or remove 2 threat. You're seldom going to remove 2 threat unless you're in a lot of trouble.
right.
Like you're almost always going to draw 3 cards or deal 4 damage, depending on the situation. So that's like another one of those decisions that fits into that like obligation mindset for me of like
Yeah.
they're giving you a choice. Like when you figure out that drawing 3 cards or dealing 4 damage is going to be better most of the time, then that's like you're learning the game. And then when you figure out just in general that Nick Fury is that powerful, you've learned something about the game of like he fulfills this purpose of like improving your economy, thwarting, dealing damage, and blocking for you all with 1 card.
Mhm.
But I think you're totally on point to where, or let's say, I gotta finish that thought. So I think it's good that he exists for both like teaching new players the game and that aha moment where you realize that he's so good for the new
Yeah.
player, and then also for having a card that powerful because it's not going to be that fun if you just lose every single game you ever play and you feel like the core box doesn't have any tools to overcome the villains.
Yeah.
Whereas when you realize that like you have Maria Hill, you have Nick Fury, you have Make the Call, you have minion slaying and aggression, you have threat removal and justice, and you kind of combine all those into like this really powerful strategy that can take on all those villains. That's really strong. But then propagating forward it goes to that thing of where you're like, I have had this problem. Like, why Nick Fury's here the whole time, and if
Mhm.
I'm not playing him, then like I'm just making the game harder on myself. Where like you want to make your hero as strong as you can, it sounds like, and then make the villain match your hero. If I'm understanding that.
Yeah, and I think we'll tie this all the way back to the very beginning, which is, you know, is there a correct way to play the game? No. And I think we both kind of agree fun is the biggest thing. And what's fun for person A is not fun for person B and vice versa. So for me, um, a lot of people will love theme, right? So they'll be like, well, don't use Nick Fury if he doesn't fit the theme. I don't care about the theme. Like, it doesn't matter to me. Like, I'm here to make my hero feel super powerful. Like, Professor X is going to be hanging out with the Avengers and Spider-Man people for like ever in my decks. Like, I just like that the card's really good. Same with Ironheart. I think the cards are really good. So I don't care about the theme as much. I care about using strong cards. So for me personally, that gets me stuck with using Nick Fury and X a lot of times. And that's not a bad thing. I think that's a fine thing because my goal is different than maybe someone else's goal of like, well, it doesn't fit my theme, so I'm not going to do it. And like we said, there is no correct way to play, essentially. So if you're more into that way of doing it, it's fine. I think my biggest issue with it was that too often people would say, like, online or whatever, like, this card's too strong. And the response was, well, just don't do that then. And it's like, well, no, if me playing fun is to deal as much damage as possible, make the strongest deck that I can personally build, then I'm going to play that card. And to restrict myself from playing that card doesn't make sense in the way that I enjoy the game.
Yeah, and I think I fall in the opposite side of to where I don't feel bad not including Nick Fury, but
Mhm.
I also don't think that you're wrong because you feel bad.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like, and it's such an interesting problem to me from like the game design perspective of how that works. Another thing is I played Lord of the Rings, the card game, like a couple times, and I looked at Gandalf and I was like,
Yep, same card.
this is the same thing as Nick Fury, and also it feels like if I draw Gandalf, then I'm probably gonna win, and if I don't, then I'm probably gonna lose. And then you go into Marvel Champions, and they chose to do the same exact thing again. And since I'd be
Mhm.
really curious to see your thoughts on that because I was not around for Lord of the Rings at all, and
Yeah.
but what? Why do you think they did that, and like how has it affected you as a player who's played both?
So I think the big difference is in Lord of the Rings, I could put 3 copies of Gandalf in my deck. In Nick Fury, I can only put 1. And I think that's how they went about trying to limit it, because there wasn't that unique restriction on Lord of the Rings cards. Um, so I think that's their way of getting around it. But that's what kind of made Lord of the Rings, like, if you look at every single deck that's in the top like 100 on Lord of the Rings, I think it's like 99%. I'm sure someone will correct that and be like, "Oh, it's actually 96%." But roughly a lot of the decks have Gandalf in it. It just made the most sense to put Gandalf in it. And that's also because the scenarios are incredibly hard sometimes, and like borderline near impossible, especially on nightmare difficulty. So you need the strongest deck. Like, you're not there for theme. You can do theme and it can be good, but you need a strong deck. Versus Marvel Champions, I feel like is a bit easier of a game, and that's not a bad thing. I think that's inherently a good thing because it does allow for more people to, okay, I care about theme, I don't care about difficulty as much, so thus now the game is more enjoyable because in the end of the day we all want to win. Like, if you don't win, it's not as fun. You don't want to win all the time, so it's a balancing act. So I think that was their way of kind of fixing, is that there are a lot of things in Marvel Champions that they stole from Lord of the Rings. And it makes sense. It's the same designers that started. So why wouldn't they? They needed a good base. And there's old posts about it because I don't remember them off the top of my head. But there's a lot of card similarities of like they just reworded it something, but it does the same exact thing. And Nick
Like
Fury and
sneak
Gandalf
attack.
obviously
I
the
saw
same.
that
Yeah.
when I played it too.
Sneak attack is really strong in Lord of the Rings. Luckily, they nerfed it a bit in Marvel Champions because I think sneak attack is only a phase versus the entire round. And I think in Lord of the Rings, it's the entire round it stays off. So like you just like did sneak attack all the time, and
And
it's
it's
just like, okay,
Gandalf,
like
right? If I'm understanding correctly, you sneak attack Gandalf.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's just it's dumb sometimes. It's just so strong. But yeah, so I think that was the way of limiting it, is they take some of those cards and they go, okay, these were really well designed cards. Let's just either power it down, power it up, whatever it may be. And for allies, allies in Lord of the Rings are incredibly strong, so let's limit so you can only have one of each ally, generally speaking, um, in there. So I think that's how they changed it. I think it was a good change overall. But I mean, you look at like player side schemes or personal side schemes, like that's stolen from Lord of the Rings. They're probably going to do contracts at some point. I'm sure that was designed, so that's gonna be a thing stolen from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, and I guess another thing I'm wondering about, because I see your perspective on why you feel like you don't want to feel like you have to not include cards to
Mm.
balance the game so you can have fun, because that's not a fun thing for you to do. But like, where do you draw the line for yourself when you're putting your decks together? Because like, if you add Nick Fury and then you add Professor X, and then you have a hero that like adds a couple other cards, then where do you draw the line between saying no, I want my deck to be more diverse than this, and yes, I'm playing for power?
Um, the way I do it now is based on. So I guess I'm backwards with most people. I think most people pick the hero they want to play and then pick the scenario. And I do it the other way. I pick the scenario I want to play and then the hero. So if I'm playing against Ronan, right? I know that like Professor X might not make, well, he probably still makes sense, but maybe some other card I put in all the time maybe not make sense. So I don't mind limiting myself a bit on that because I'm gonna have to rush him, right? At the end of the day, like I'm gonna have to rush him. Or if I'm playing against Ronan and I for some reason chose Star Lord to play, like the way I play Star Lord against Ronan is completely different than how I play Valkyrie against Ronan. So maybe Nick Fury doesn't make as much sense in that situation. Or if I'm playing a really easier scenario, let's say Drang, I think is a pretty easy scenario. Okay, like I can have a little more fun experimenting, right? Because I do want to sometimes force myself to pick um pick cards that I haven't used in the past because maybe I undervalue them. So I want to like test it out and try it. So I'll do that. But at the end of the day, like if I'm still trying to build the strongest deck possible because I'm playing a harder scenario and I'm actually playing quote unquote for real, then I'm going to fall back on old reliables for the most part. But it's really just to push myself deck building of like, okay, Waylay. I haven't used that card a ton. Everyone claims it's this goated card. It's amazing. I, I never really tried it. Let me build a deck around that card to see if I can test it out and see if I like it, and then start playing. I was like, oh yeah, this is a pretty good card. I could see situations where this makes sense. Maybe not for me all the time, but it would. And that's the only way I limit myself. But like, if I'm making a video where it's not playing for stream, it's just me playing, and it's an expert villain, and like Patreon and YouTube voted for it, whatever. Like, I want to win, so I'm not gonna do experimental cards. Like, I'm gonna do the strong cards. So that's kind of how I pick what I do.
Okay, that okay. I'm really understanding here, and it's just interesting because it just brings up more questions trying to understand the
Okay.
enigma that's D20. Like I have this theory that the perfect card in Marvel Champions to me is Med Team. I love Med Team.
Okay.
I think it's like that's like my sweet spot of how powerful a card should be. Where Med Team is um not broken. I don't think I've ever heard anyone claim it's broken, but it gives you a way to stay in hero form if you need to avoid the main scheme from finishing. You can heal up
Okay.
allies if you want to get more activations out of them. The protection player can heal up like leadership Voltron allies, which is very strong. Or you can heal up your other teammates that are playing to like keep
Mhm.
their identities alive. And I've just really enjoyed that card the entire time it's been in existence.
Mhm.
But it's probably like mid tier in power. It's not it's not broken. It's not weak, at least in my experience with it. But then mapping that onto scenarios for you, since you think like in the scenario to deck way, what is your like perfect difficulty scenario, like for your own enjoyment?
For enjoyment scenario, I don't know if there's a perfect one. Like I think because I've played every single scenario so much that I just want something to feel fresh at this point. So like I'll fall back on certain ones that like, okay, Thanos is really difficult on expert and enjoyable difficult. Magneto to me is the same exact way. Ronan to me is that same exact way. So those are scenarios like, okay, if I want to just play difficulty, that's what I'm gonna go with. Versus like we get Shield Box, for example. What do I look for? All right, maybe another villain that can join that tier list, but I just want something that's new and interesting, unique for the scenario. So I don't know if there's really a sweet spot. I think unfortunately for me, I think a lot of things are kind of off a gut feeling, and that's hard to quantify to people, right? Like people will be like, "Oh, how would you do this and do that?" And it's like it just doesn't feel right. And I know that drives people nuts, but like a lot of my stuff is based off. That's how I deck build, and it's not an efficient way to deck build. It's just I'll play with a deck and I'll be like, I just feel like this didn't make sense. And I can't tell you why it didn't make sense. Maybe it's because I didn't play it that much. Maybe it's because every time I glanced at my hand, I just went, ugh, why do I have that card in there? Like it could just be that. And I'm sure there's a way to quantify that, but I don't sit there and like track it or whatnot. It's just like, I feel like this was a useless card. Why did I do that? So yeah, that's kind
I
of how I
think
approach
that's
things.
interesting for me too. When I started, I made that like basic ally tier list video where I like
Mhm.
assigned efficiencies to every single ally. And then after that, people assumed that like that's how I look at the game, which is really funny to me. I enjoy doing that, but I have never referenced my own tier list to build a deck. Because when I throw a
Yeah.
card in, I'm thinking either I want this card because it feels right, or I want this card
Mhm.
for a purpose. And like I have it filtered in I naturally filter things into like strong and weak cards in my head, but I don't
Yeah.
care like if like the war machine ally is like point 0.2 efficiency higher than another ally. I never think about that, which is funny to me because
Mhm.
like I feel like my channel specifically gets lumped into like a lot of people have assumed that I think that way about the game when I'm playing, and it's like no, I just hang out. I just like these little projects because I'm weird.
Yeah. Well, and it's like let's take a card like multitasking for a second. I think multitasking is an incredibly strong card for certain situations, right? Being able to remove two and then two, especially for solo, like it's a low amount. Generally, it's gonna be a low amount of threat on things. Like it's an amazing card for solo, but I'll like when I talk about strong cards, I'll mention that a lot, but there are other scenarios where like there's no side scheme. So why would you ever include this card? Like it doesn't make sense. Or even in multiplayer, I don't think this card makes as much sense in multiplayer because it's just gonna be going up by, let's say you're playing a 4 player, going by 4. Well, this card's never gonna keep up. So what's the point? So I think with that stuff, it gets kind of interesting too, that since all my stuff is mostly solo perspective, I'll value certain cards super high in my head for deck building and other ones low. And people will be like, why would you ever do that? Like there are stronger cards. And you talk about how you want to build the strength all the time. It's like, well, yeah, for solo.
Yeah, I think I think I've figured out one of my answers for like
Mm,
my villain that is like the correct difficulty to me. Maybe not. But I really like I really enjoy the ones that come to my head are Taskmaster. I love
okay.
Taskmaster. He feels like he's not gonna just like do something completely unfair and beat me. But also
Mm,
it's never gonna be a cakewalk with Taskmaster either, because he's always making you deal with something. It's like I like that. And then another one, if I'm looking for more of like a difficult experience, for solo especially, I really like Apocalypse One. I feel like he
yeah,
really
that's a
like
good one.
puts you under a lot of stress to where you're like, I have to get through these side schemes. I want to do it quickly, but I have to deal with these minions, and it's not as gameable as the Hella scenario was. And
Mm,
then also there's that impending threat of like I can let him change into his fourth form, but then he gets like overkill and stalwart or something like that, and it's like I can't deal with
yeah,
that. And then
right.
he's just like it's not like to the Ronin level, because when I'm playing Ronin, I'm just like, okay, well at any point if I get unlucky, I can lose.
Mm,
No matter how good my board state is, there's always the chance that he gets fanaticism, attacks me twice in one turn, and then I die. Which that's not very fun to me. I don't
mhm,
like that if he finishes the first main scheme in one scheme every single time. That's not fun to me. Like you have to get like a
yeah,
0 boost or something for him to not do that, and he has pretty high
right.
boosts. So like that level is where I'm feeling like okay, I'm only building for power, and it's still like I could lose even when I'm only building for power, and then I feel like I'm locked into only certain types of builds against him too, or like I
Yeah.
have to use the Sunfire ally, get rid of his weapon, then stun lock him, or I have to like spam allies and hope he doesn't get fanaticism, or I
Overkill,
have to
yeah.
like just only play certain heroes that can survive a fanaticism attack, which is like also not fun for me. It's like he's like
Mhm.
too high for me to where like that's not my enjoyment level. But then Apocalypse One like really fits the bill for me of like if I'm looking for a challenge, I go to Apocalypse One.
I will say with Ronin, one of the things that like because people always bring this up with Ronin is experiment with his modular set. Like if you're struggling with him, just people in general, not you, Daring Lime, but people in general, like take out the mod set that comes with it. Like just put like long shot or something else in there, like something that's better for you personally. And also I think what I like about Ronan is he taught me, kind of going along with your med team example, is he taught me the importance of being able to heal on my hero side. Because so often I would think about healing was only good for like flipping down and whatever, and then popping back up, and you really can't do that with him. And when you get to the expert difficulty, I think very generally speaking, it's important to have cards that you can heal on your hero side. And he taught me really the importance of that because he will just pop things really quick, and you can't have that happen. So yeah, and then again, just play Star Lord, people.
I love
Star Lord
Star
will
Lord.
erase him. I know, I do too. And he erases Ronin. Like it's I think my win rate on expert with Star Lord against Ronin's like 80%. Like it's very, very simple to win. But nobody recognizes the greatness that is Star Lord. So
I love Star Lord. It's me, you, and Villain Theory are the team Star Lord.
no,
Yeah.
no. You could put me on that team too. I'm for it.
Yeah. Okay. Team Star Lord. Let's go. And yeah, I think that we've covered everything that we wanted to here. So I want to mention that this series is going to alternate between our channels. So for the next one, make sure to check out D20's channel because it'll go up there. I don't know exactly when yet. And comment below your thoughts on both this and then what you want us to talk about in the future. And again, I'll update that into the document so that we can always try to focus the discussions around things that you actually care about. Because ultimately, we're making this for y'all to listen to and watch and enjoy.
Yeah, yeah. Because if it was up to us, I would just be sitting here talking about how great Valkyrie is and that everyone should play her. And I don't know why you play any other hero. Just they're all inferior and weak. So
Yeah, and I'm still trying to understand, but and maybe someday I will, but I haven't got there yet.
no. It took me time too. It's okay.
Okay, so thanks for watching, everyone, especially if you made it all the way to the end. I haven't edited this yet, so I don't know how long this video is going to be. But yeah, I appreciate all of you. Stay zesty, and I'll see you next time.